This one's got me shook.
All right, let's see it.
James Version, Psalm 82,
Ah, my favorite psalm. You have my attention.
4. Deliver the poor and needy, rid them out of the hand of the wicked. Ethiopian Bible,
No, that's not the Ethiopian Bible. If you're talking about any of the canonical books of the 66 book Protestant canon, no publication that calls itself the Ethiopian Bible is actually going to be giving you an English translation of any Ethiopian manuscripts. And there are a few reasons for this. One is that there has been no English translation made of the canonical books of the Ethiopian biblical manuscripts. They are primarily translating the things that are not canonical, the things that sit outside the 66 book Protestant canon. So the folks who are making and publishing these Ethiopian Bibles are just taking existing English translations of the canonical books of the Bible that are in the public domain and then slapping them into this publication and calling it the Ethiopian Bible. But they're not. So this translation of Psalm 82, whatever it's going to be, is not the Ethiopian Bible. It's going to be a public domain English translation that already exists and is freely accessible online.
Psalm 82. Rescue the weak and needy. Deliver them out of the hand of the wicked.
So that would be the World English Bible, which is a public domain text that has been available since, I think, beginning around 2000, although I think in 2020 they announced that they were finished. And the World English Bible is just a revision of the American Standard Version, which was published in 1901, which was a slight revision on the Revised Version, which was published 20 years earlier, which itself is a revision of the King James Version. So it sounds to me like the editors of this Ethiopian Bible, when it came to the 66 books of the Protestant canon, they just went in search of the most recent English translation of the Bible that was in the public domain that they could slap into this book without paying any money and could still sound like a decent English translation. They went with the World English Bible, which I don't think is a very good translation. But this is not an English translation of the Ethiopian Bible. This is just an update to an update to an update of the King James Version.
The King James says, deliver the poor and needy. The Ethiopian says, rescue the weak and needy.
So it sounds like there's a concern about the different ways these two texts rendered the verbal root palat in Hebrew. Here's the beginning of the entry for this verbal root in halot, the Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament. Up in the upper left, you see basic meaning to escape. But in Psalm 82:4, the verb is in the PL stem, and it is a masculine plural imperative. So if we go down to the PL sense, and PL is factitive, so in grammar that means it puts the object of the verb in a new state. So put it in the state of being saved. So you can see here, one, to bring out, meaning to save. So the difference between the King James Version and the World English Bible is really more a matter of preference, a matter of style, than it is some kind of significant difference in interpretation.
King James Version, Psalm 82. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Ethiopian Bible, Psalm 82. Defend the weak, the poor, and the fatherless. I almost missed the part that said maintain the rights of the poor and oppressed. Why would they remove that in the King James Version? Please.
So the King James Version didn't remove anything. The King James Version is almost 400 years older than the World English Bible that is falsely being presented as the Ethiopian Bible. But again, this just comes down to preference regarding how to translate a single Hebrew verb, which is based on this Hebrew root, saddak. On the bottom left, you see the beginning of the entry, to be just. Can mean to be just, receive justice, to consider someone as just, innocent. And in our particular verse, this is appearing in the, again, masculine plural imperative, but this time it is in the hifil stem. And so on the bottom right, you see the beginning of the entry on the sense in the hifil, and then the rest of it goes on to the next page. Sense 1, to obtain rights for, to admit as right, to treat as innocent. Sense 2, to assist someone towards his rights. So it's probably closer in the World English Bible than it is in the King James Version, but this isn't about removing anything. This is just about different ways to approach the translation of this one verb.
So the King James Version says, defend the poor and the fatherless. The Ethiopian Bible says, defend the weak, the poor, and the fatherless. So King James didn't want to protect the weak and defend the weak.
So this difference is another artifact of the fact that we're comparing the King James Version to the World English Bible and not to any Ethiopian Bible. The King James Version did not remove anything because the word weak is not in the Hebrew. The World English Bible has it because they're expanding on their source text, the American Standard Version. If you look up this passage in the American Standard Version, it's going to say the poor and the fatherless. But there's going to be a footnote marker attached to the word poor, and if you go look at that, it's going to say or weak. And so it sounds like the editor of the World English Bible decided they would just split the difference and put the word weak into the text itself, even though there is no second word in the Hebrew. So this is a problem with the World English Bible. But the word that we're rendering here is dal. Here's the entry in the Halot, and you can see around the middle of the page the bold text, low, poor. That's sense number 1. Sense number 2, helpless. Sense number 3, powerless, insignificant, small. Sense number 4, poor. Sense number 5, downcast, sullen. So again, whether you decide poor or weak is a question of preference and style. It's not really about removing anything here. In fact, it's about the fact that the thing that is pretending to be the Ethiopian Bible is based on a translation that just arbitrarily added something to the text.
What did he do with the weak? Did he pursue them with the maximum force of the law, removing life, liberty, and freedom from those who disagreed with him? I think so.
Well, I think treating that as a matter of principle or policy is debatable. But irrespective, King James didn't really have anything to do with individual translation decisions on individual verses. And again, this is not a question of the King James Version taking anything out. This is the question of the editors of this Ethiopian Bible using the World English Bible as its biblical base text, and the World English Bible just arbitrarily adding the word into this particular passage.
Everything that I find shows that he committed the wicked. King James has kept thousands of people from being willing to read the scripture.
Odd little editorial seam there. I don't know exactly what this content creator was trying to say, but obviously we're moving on.
My good news for you is there is a path to scripture, to Christ, that is without having to go through King James to get there.
So I think you may need to read the introduction to this Ethiopian Bible a little more closely. Hopefully it will tell you in there that it is using the World English Bible for all of the canonical biblical texts. And that is a revision of a revision of a revision of the King James Version. So in the end, you're still going through the King James Version.
Don't let King James stop you from finding Christ. There's an Ethiopian Bible linked below.
Look, this is not an Ethiopian Bible. This is a way for some editors to make a quick buck by using public domain translations of things like the Book of Jubilees and the Book of First Enoch, and by using public domain versions of the rest of the Bible like the World English Bible, and by using Pidgin or Creole translations that are in the public domain of some of the books from the Ethiopian canon that do not exist yet in full English translations. So they're cobbling together something that they can sell and make a quick buck on, but it's not really representative of the Ethiopian Bible. Not the many different manuscripts that exist, not the single version of the Ethiopian Bible that's been available since around the 1970s. No English translation has been published of that yet. So again, this is just a way for editors to cobble together existing public domain translations that are either English or sound close enough to English for you to not notice.
You can pick up yours. It has God's name back in Scripture. It has the full 88 books. It was not edited down by the kings of the past. It is for the people. It is expensive. So if you see it for less than $99, it's a good deal. It's big. It has the audiobook. It's got the missing Apocrypha. It's got the books of Enoch, the fallen angels, the Nephilim. It's got the books of Jubilee, which is debt forgiveness. The king wouldn't forgive debt. He wanted lifetime taxation without representation. That's why in America we have Jubilee and can go bankrupt every 7 years. That's a Jubilee principle.
The 7-year cycle would have to do with the Shemitah, or the sabbatical year, rather than the full Jubilee, which is something that happens in the 50th year. And credit reporting does tend to have bad credit things fall off after 7 years. There are a variety of different ways the Shemitah has influenced the way credit and bankruptcy and things like that works, but it's not really like a formal official forgiveness thing or anything like that. And it exists in England too. So it is not just something that we've done here in America because we've gotten rid of the influence of King James. That's not how any of this works. And the fit for this video has been Frog and Toad.